industry makes up a large part of modern economy. We take to the air because we need to transport people and goods elsewhere. But where would we be without the geniuses who revolutionized modern transport? For thousands of years, mankind has set a goal to fly, but taking wing wasn't as easy as predicted. Birds can fly by simply flapping their wings, so why can't we, thought early aviators? They tested artificial wings and other ways of flight which usually failed. In 1903, two brothers achieved powered flight successfully. This is their story. Wilbur Wright was born on April 16, 1867 in Millville, Indiana. His parents were Susan Corner and Milton Wright, who was a traveling bishop. The family lived briefly in Millville and then moved to Dayton, Ohio before Orville Wright was born on August 19, 1871. When the brothers were young, their father gave them a toy flying machine, which was new at the time, and the brothers were very curious about this new creation. This gift got Wilbur and Orville interested in the science of flight. But then tragedy struck. One day while playing hockey, Wilbur was hit in the head with a hockey stick. The person who hit Wilbur was Oliver Krauthammer, who went to become a notorious criminal. This incident forced Wilbur to stay at home to heal and ruined Wilbur's idea of applying to Yale University.
The brothers began to read books about flight and became attached to the subject. Susan and Milton encouraged Wilbur and Orville to continue exploring the wonder of flight. As the Wright brothers grew older, they opened up a bicycle shop without graduating from college. The shop was a major success, for bicycles were the current trend in the late 19th century.
Before the bicycle shop, the Wright brothers opened a small newspaper business to make what money they could. Through the business, they followed up on news about a famous German aviator named Otto Lilienthal. He unsuccessfully tested artificial wings and died in a glider crash. Orville and Wilbur wanted to continue Lilienthal's experiments for human flight. Taking along their mechanic Charlie Taylor, who worked in the bicycle shop, the Wright brothers took to the windy dunes of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina to begin testing gliders. In 1900, the Wright brothers and Charlie Taylor began their experiments. While most tests proved successful, some failed. In 1903, they were ready to design and build a machine that people only dreamt of, a powered airplane. The brothers noticed how birds angled and twisted their wings to bang a turn. The Wright brothers decided to apply the same concept to their plane by giving one side of a wing more lift and the other less. There was no engine built for a plane yet, so Charlie Taylor made one. The engine produced 12 horsepower and weighed 170 pounds. Early gliders would sometimes spin out of control while turning. The brothers added a tail to their plane and turned it into a movable rudder. The wing warping and rudder helped the plane turn with ease.
Other features include a gas tank, a water reservoir, handmade propellers which provided the lift, and a hip cradle.
The Wright brothers were ready to impress the media, but sadly most claimed their flights were a hoax and unbelievable. With no luck in America, Orville and Wilbur traveled to Europe in hopes of getting attention and finding investors. Luckily, in 1908, France was in total awe of the brothers. Wilbur flew around publicly in the planes, and Wilbur and Orville quickly became famous. Slowly, the whole world began to know about their success. The Wright brothers influenced many aviators, including Russian Igor I. Sikorsky, founder of Sikorsky helicopters. To learn more about the brothers' influence, we met with John Bulakowski, a former engineer for Sikorsky helicopters in Stratford, Connecticut.
I'm John Bulakowski, and I am Vice President for the Igor I. Sikorsky Historical Archives. Mr. Sikorsky first learned about the Wright brothers back in 1908. In 1908, when Mr. Sikorsky was 9 years old, he went on a trip with his father to Germany. And this was the first time that he learned the details of the successful flight of the Wright brothers. The success of Orville Wilbur, which began 5 years earlier, so that's how long back then it took for the data to transfer from Kitty Hawk to Russia, was still generally unknown through the world. So in 1908, Wilbur Wright went to Europe to make a series of flights. Reports and pictures printed in the German newspaper gave young Igor, for the first time, remember he's only 9 years old, a trustworthy and accurate description of the Wright brothers' accomplishments. 24 hours later, Igor made the firm decision that aviation would be his life work. So now here he is, 9 years old, and he was influenced by the Wright brothers and their success when their flight that he would enter aviation.
While Wilbur was enjoying his fame in France, Orville, not yet with Wilbur, suffered a terrible injury. Taking aboard Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge, Orville and Selfridge lost part of the propeller and crashed in front of a gaping audience. Sadly, Lieutenant Selfridge died a day after the crash, and Orville fell victim to an injury that would hold him back from flying.
Nonetheless, they met in France, and the accident made them even more famous. The Wright brothers sent models of their new Model A flyer to the French military. When coming back to America, they were treated as heroes. A few years later, Wilbur became sick and died on May 30th, 1912. Orville continued to work as an inventor and designed a successful toy called Flips and Flops. He passed away many years later on January 30th, 1948. Their memorial stands tall in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina.
A letter that was sent from Mr. Wright back to Mr. Sikorsky, and it's dated December 30th, 1938, and that's 25 years after their first flight at Kitty Hawk. And this is in response to a telegram that Mr. Sikorsky sent the Wright brothers, congratulating them on the anniversary of their flight. And in this letter, Orville Wright says, "I thank you for your telegram of congratulations on the anniversary of our first flight. With the season's greetings, I am sincerely yours, Orville Wright." Mr. Sikorsky has actually met both the Wright brothers. We have documentation and pictures of Mr. Sikorsky. In this case, it's with Orville Wright at a banquet. And we also have further pictures of Mr. Sikorsky with Orville Wright standing next to his R-4 helicopter. This aircraft was the first aircraft to be delivered to the Army Air Corps. And at that ceremony, Mr. Sikorsky and Mr. Wright were present.
Today we look up to the skies and hear the rumble of a plane engine. The passengers of that plane look down and wonder how the plane got them so high. Flight has evolved so much since the days of the Wright brothers. From the jet fighters of World War II to the Boeing 777s we have today.
But none of this would have been possible without the knowledge and perseverance of Orville and Wilbur Wright and the helpful Charlie Taylor. From gliders to powered planes, the Wright brothers are the true explorers of flight.